uh, like you to ask any question that you would like to ask in order to clarify areas that are not clear. So, because today is the last, the next two classes will be handled by Pasindu, who will take you through the project management part. So, shall we start? Before I go through the summary of the assessment again, to ask any question that you think you should ask me to get things clarified. Whatever question that you ask me would benefit the others as well. So, any gray areas that you need to clear up?
I mean, that batch process. Wait a minute. The type of process.
Right. The type of now.
JJ, wait a minute. My connection got hand.
Right. What is the organization that you selected?
Wait, it's a local organization, JJ, that as I informed earlier, that spices company.
So, what, is it a product-based portfolio or service-based portfolio that you're talking about here?
Product.
It's a product. So, which means obviously it's going to be a manufacturing process.
Yeah.
So, you are basically saying you're going to move the manufacturing process from Sri Lanka to the selected country.
Yes, correct.
Right?
Yes.
That is what you are basically saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so then identify the entire manufacturing process end to end.
Okay.
So that is a process, that is the part of the operation that you're going to move from Sri Lanka to the specified country. So the first thing is, draw the process flow diagrams of that identified process.
Okay.
So once that is done, now identify the gaps in the process.
No, I mean, JJ, that there are 5 types of manufacturing process, right? That
Yes.
Job shop processing, process manufacturing, process continuous manufacturing, like that.
Right. Okay, so that
Just can you explain
say for
this
example,
with
yeah,
example?
sorry, go ahead.
Can you explain these kind of things with the example?
Right, okay, process. See, there are two ends to this process designs, two ends. One end is called the continuous process. The other end is called the project process.
Okay.
Now, each of these processes are used for a particular type of product. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, look at the project type or a job shop. You can call it a job shop or you can call it a project.
Okay.
Now, what happens there in a project process, the degree of automation for that particular process is low, very low, because it's a process that is being used for highly specialized items. Okay.
You mean that job process, right?
That's right. The job process is being used for highly specialized items.
Can you give me an example?
So example of a highly specialized item would be, a racing car. A racing car is not manufactured in the normal assembly lines. A racing car is generally customized to a very high degree. So you can't, so most of these things are, specialized processes.
Okay.
Specifically,
Then you mean first I have to identify that specialized process in my company, right?
Yeah. So in your manufacturing process,
Yeah.
um, do you have specialized processes? You
Yes.
may have.
Yes.
You
Yes.
may have. So you have to identify what are these sort of processes that you consider as specialized processes and why. Okay.
Okay.
Now the other extreme is the continuous process. Continuous process means activities are predictable in the sense, the tasks, the manufacturing tasks are sequential. If you're in a manufacturing plant, you would understand that.
Yeah.
It's,
That you mean that packing, quality textile like that, right?
that's right. That's right. Absolutely. So it's basically sequential. So because it's sequential, now for example, you look at a vehicle manufacturing plant, right? What happens is, you get this assembly line where components are fit in, and then as they get fitted onto this particular framework, the product moves from one location to the other, and as it moves in the assembly line, there are people who will actually start completing the rest of the areas in the product. So you may start, for example, you have in the vehicle, in a vehicle you did the frame. So you
Hmm?
start with the frame. Then what happens is, you know, you start fitting in the axle. Then you start fitting in the wheels. Then
Hmm.
you start fitting in the dashboard. Then you will start fitting in the doors. Then you will start fitting in the engine. So it goes on like that until the entire vehicle is completed.
Yes. Yes. Correct.
So that's an assembly line. Now, because of the sequential aspect of that process, this process becomes a candidate for automation, because you are predictable. No, you do one process and then one activity and then this other activity. So it goes on like that, continuous activities, which are predictable. So these are the two ends, right? The two ends. Now, actually, a continuous process, the best example for a continuous process is oil rig,
Ah,
where the changes between activities are very minute, right?
okay.
So the petroleum companies, and what they do is the oil rig is highly computerized. All what you do is sit behind a computer and then manage the entire process. It's highly automated,
Yeah.
right? But most manufacturing processes falls in between, right? You won't, it's very difficult to get a manufacturing process which is highly um, automated and highly specialized.
Yes. Yes.
So you will get parts of your processes either specialized or automated to a higher degree. So these are what you call cells. These are what you call batch. So these two names you have to keep in mind: batch process and cell process. So in a cell, what happens is common activities are grouped together in the manufacturing plant.
Hmm.
Now, packing becomes, in your organization, your packing becomes a specialized activity, but within packing, there is a semblance of um, predictability of the activities. So these activities can be linked together in such a way that they can be automated. But that happens in a particular cell. So packing becomes a self-contained cell. Are
Yes.
you with me on this?
Yeah.
So, but for this particular are basically not required to identify these processes. You can do. You're not required. That is not mandatory. But if you want, you can just identify that.
Okay, Jay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Any other question? No questions. Right. So let's take a look at the assessment. I have done some modification to the assessment guide, and then I have uploaded it. So if you have download this one, you have to download this again, because I have done some modifications to the assessment guide.
Is it on the Moodle already?
Yeah, it's on the Moodle. It's already on the Moodle.
Okay,
Let's check that one. Let's check. Right. So, can you all see my screen?
Yes, JJ.
Right, fine. Let me take you through the entire assessment guide so that you are 100%, you are crystal clear as to what is expected out of your report and your assessment, right? Okay, so the aim of this entire module is, to explore the specific activities in the area of operations and project management. Now for that, they would like you to identify an organization of your choice. The organization could be a manufacturing organization or it could be a service organization. And then once you identify that organization, you have to do an in-depth study of how this organization operates, in simple words. Now, if somebody were to ask you, how does that organization operate? What do you say? So now what happens is you answer that same question, but support your answers using theories and concepts in operations management. Okay. So the rationale for this assessment is to allow students to simulate real life experience. I told you at the beginning of the session that this is a 100% practical assessment. So you need to know something about this operation to do justice to this assessment. So that is why they want you to select an organization of your choice, organization that you are comfortable with, the organization that you know very well inside out. So the ideal organization is probably the organization that you have had experience working in, but it does not have to. So you need to study the operations of that particular organization that you select. That should be the starting point anyway. Okay. Now, there are basically 4 learning outcomes that would be tested, or that would be checked. Now these learning outcomes are sort of validated or evaluated in the answers that you provide, in the reports that you present, in the presentations that you do. So what are the learning outcomes? The principles and characteristics governing approaches to managing operations. So managing operations means, it's very wide. So operations has the inventory control aspect, the real core operations performance objective aspect, identifying your products and service portfolios, and identifying the characteristics of these portfolios. Then your quality management aspects, waste management aspects. So these are the theories and the concepts, that has to be used when analyzing this organization that you select. Okay. The second one is, you have to evaluate the quality control. So quality is something that you cannot actually play around with. Quality is something that organizations have to take aboard seriously, right? So what are these quality management processes that the organization use? Then how does the organization develop, or has the organization developed an operations strategy? Now, operations strategy is actually the operationalization of your business strategy. Now, those who know how to do your corporate strategy or your business strategy is basically conceptual. It's on paper. It is basically telling people where the organization wants to be. Operationalizing the business strategy means the detailed activities that the organization would do to achieve that goal. Now, detailed activities would encompass things like, how do you manage your demand? What is the IT systems that you will be using? What kind of processes that you are basically going to use in your, service operations or manufacturing operations? How many outlets are going to be there? Are you going to operate only in Sri Lanka, or are you going to operate, globally? So these are some of the things that has to get into your operations strategy. Determine and apply fundamental project management principles. Now that is used when you try to explain how you intend operationalizing the move from Sri Lanka to the selected country. Okay, so these are the learning outcomes that will be basically tested in the assignment. So what is the assignment overview? Now this is very important. You have to really understand what is required from the assessment. Most of you have done it. Now, I don't know, there are a couple of students, couple of guys who have not actually had a discussion with me on the selected organizations. I would advise them to sort of, contact me in their free time, and then so that we can actually discuss this operation, discuss, the organization that you have selected. Those who have selected the organization and then, explained the product portfolios and service portfolios and what you intend doing. I have given my feedback, but even from those students, there may be a couple of guys whom I had not been able to have one-on-one sessions. So those who have not had a one-on-one session, I'd advise you to just drop me a text message or drop me an email so that we can actually arrange that. But for those who have not still identified or selected an organization and have not filled that form and uploaded to the Moodle, I would advise you to basically do it as soon as possible, because that would be in your best interest. Otherwise, you might struggle later on. because you should know exactly what the expectations of the assessment is, and that can only be done uh, if you first organize, or if you identify the organization. So once the selected organization is selected, once the organization operating physically in Sri Lanka is selected, then you have to assume that the selected organization in another country. Okay. Now the question might be asked, why this have to be? So you go on the assumption that the organization has decided to expand because to reduce the adverse impact of a major disaster. Now, in this case, a major disaster could be, flood or earthquake, or um, other stormy weather, or hurricanes. You can even talk about this COVID-19 as well, but then in this case, COVID-19 is not limited to a particular country, so you can't actually use that as an excuse. But probably you can basically talk about health disasters as well, like famines, like what you call different kinds of flus, and different kind of health issues that the country might face, that may have an adverse impact of your operation. So that is why your organization has decided to expand into another country. So once that is done, you produce a project plan for the new facility and make a 20 minutes presentation of the project. So now that is part A. Now there is also something called an individual reflection and evaluation. I will touch on that today, right? But before I go there, let's do a recap of what is expected out of your presentation. Can you see this? Should be there in the Moodle. Those who have access to the Moodle, you can download that. So these are the assessment details, right? So your presentation should be in 2 parts. Now this is very clear, and it's very clearly explained as to the expectation from your presentation. Now if you have an issue with this, if you don't understand it, please tell me, because this is very important, this is very detailed, and then it gives you an indication as to what is expected out of your presentation. So part A, the first thing that you should do is introduce your organization, right? So introduction to the organization, which is introduce what your product portfolio is. If it is a service organization, what your service portfolio is, its mission, its vision. So that's probably one slide. Remember, there is no restriction to the number of slides that you are allowed to use, but your presentation should be limited to 20 minutes, right? Then you have got product and service portfolio of the organization mapped to the product service life cycle diagram. That now is very important. For those who have already discussed this with me, I've explained the requirement.
JJ, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
This part A, how many slides do you expect in part A?
That's what I said. There is no restriction to the number of slides that are expected, right?
But this is 20 minutes also part A.
Not part A. Overall presentation should be 20 minutes. So you can basically say part A would take about probably 10 to 12 minutes, and the part B another 10 to 12 minutes. Okay.
Okay. Cool.
Right. So then you have to do the 4V analysis of the product service categories. You know what to do. You can refer it to the slides. Then you have to look at the operations performance objectives relevant to the product and service categories that you identify. So your performance objectives are, quality, and speed. So these five has to be, identified. Now you may realize that your organization is not focusing on all five. That is quite okay, but state that. You need to state the fact that the selected organization is not um, focusing on all five performance objectives. It is only focusing on probably 3 or 4. So that is quite okay, right? So what is important is to present the actual scenario of this particular organization that you have selected,
JJ,
along with the gaps.
sorry about disturb you.
Go ahead, please.
Right now, we have a deadline for this presentation. Do we have to submit this? Let's say we are doing it in PowerPoint. Do we have to
Yes.
submit this PowerPoint presentation beforehand, or
Yeah, you have to submit. You have to upload the PowerPoint presentation to the Moodle.
we have to do it, right?
Yes,
Upload it, right?
Upload it, yes. Because because there are actually two things. One is the construction of the PowerPoint. Marks will be given to the construction of the PowerPoint presentation, right?
Okay.
And then marks will be given for the presentation as well.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Right. So then you're talking about order winning and qualifying factors of the product and service portfolio. You have to understand what order winning and qualifying is. Order winning is, the factors that makes customers purchase your product or service. Order qualifying factors are the factors that makes customers consider purchasing your product and services. So where order winning is concerned, it's basically your current customer base. And then the question has to be asked, why do they continue purchasing that product or service from you? Then the qualifying factors are customers who are still not your customers. Maybe they are, customers of another competitor. But for some reason or other, they are interested in purchasing your product. But what are these factors in your product and service that makes them interested in purchasing your product? So organizations should know this, especially if you ask your marketing division should basically say, what are the order winning factors of your product and or services, and what are the qualifying factors of your product? What are the factors that makes customers interested in purchasing your product? Those are qualifying factors. Next one is how the organization identifies market demand. So how does the organization identify or predict demand? How does the organization know how much to sell next month? How does the organization probably create demand? Using advertising, using so many things like that. How does it manage demand? Because organizations should be living in the future. They cannot be living in the past. So they have to know how much of products or service portfolios can be sold next month, 2 months into the future, 3 months into the future, this particular year. That's your probably your demand plan, right? So you can ask the marketing division how they, decide on how much to produce, how much to sort of, sell, and what are the elements that goes into that particular decision. Okay, what are the things that they consider in identifying the actual demand for a product or service? Then if you are into a manufacturing organization or probably service organization like 3PLs, 4PLs, or warehouse management, distribution, then you're talking about inventory and warehouse operations. So if your organization uses warehouse operations or involved in warehouse operations, then obviously they should have an inventory management policy. So what is the inventory management policy and warehouse management policy that they have? This is true for manufacturing organizations, and these are true for trading organizations as well. You can import things and sell, and for that, inventory management. Then how does the organization manage quality? So what is the quality management procedure of the organization? How does the organization manage? Probably one slide would basically be enough for that. Organization, whether it is efficiency driven or responsive driven. Efficiency means you look inward to maximize capacity, maximize utilization of capacity, and operate in the future by predicting demand, by anticipating demand. You anticipate how much of products should be produced and then manufacture and put it into inventory. And that way you maximize utilizing your resources and your capacity. So that is called efficiency. You're looking inward. You're more worried about optimizing cost. Now, when you talk about responsiveness, it is you don't do anything until you have a confirmed customer order. Only once you have a confirmed customer order, you initiate the manufacturing process. So that's responsive. Now, in most service organizations, your supply chain strategy, your service supply chain strategy is more or less responsive rather than efficient. But if it is a manufacturing organization, right, it can be both. There are certain items that you mass produce and then get the benefit of economies of scale. And there may be certain other products you will not manufacture until you have a firm customer order. Next one is your digital process map. Does the organization has an ERP system? Or is it still using manual systems, or just desktop versions of Excel and all? So you need to look at that. Does it have a digital strategy, right? And if it does not, you have to question why not. So you may have to sort of state, it does not have a digital strategy, but going forward in the future, it is a good idea to focus on having a digital strategy for the organization. If the organization has, then you have to basically say how the organization uses its digital strategy. Are they using an ERP system? Are all the operations in the organization automated or linked together? The information flows, occur, throughout the organization. Are all functions joined together with one particular system, or does it have different systems? So these are some of the things that you need to identify and then put in. Next one is operations strategy. Now, which stage of Hayes and Wheelwright's 4-stage model of operations is the organization's operations in? Right? Is it internal neutral phase or external adaptive phase? Now, remember the Hayes and Wheelwright's diagram. I'll just show you that. Give me a sec. Right, here we are. So this, wait, I'll show this to you. Okay, so this is the slide that you need to consider. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
So this is the Hayes and Wheelwright four-stage model of operations contribution to the business strategy. So if you really look at it, the first stage is internally neutral. You are correcting the worst problems. Then you adopt the best practices. Then you link your operations with your business strategy. And next, what happens is you have an operations advantage. You are driving strategy, and then the industry is influenced by what you are basically doing. So stage 1, 2, 3, you are looking at your own organization. Stage 4, you are looking at the industry where you are operating. So basically, I took an example, like, for example, I took the example of MAS in Sri Lanka. How MAS really influence the industry per se. And then what was a big tailor shop at one time at in Katunayaka gave way to one of the world-class sort of organizations which influenced the direction that the government industry was in Sri Lanka, and then put Sri Lanka at the top of the hierarchy, where Sri Lanka is now considered as a manufacturer of quality garments for the fashion labels. So that is how MAS was actually MAS changed the direction of the industry. But once an organization comes to stage 4, you have to again go back to stage 1, because then you are looking at a different environment, and there may be certain other influences that impinge on the way that your organization operates. Okay. From a world-class organization perspective, the smartphone businesses, smartphone industry was actually led by Nokia at one time. But what happened? Nokia was here. Nokia actually at one time was driving strategy, and then he was influencing the industry per se. Everyone was following Nokia. But Nokia, refused to go back and then, review stage 1 when the external environment changed. I don't know how many of you watch the interview that they had with Nokia CEO when he decided to close shop. He cried on stage and then said, "We did not do anything wrong." That was what he said. Nokia CEO said, "We did not do anything wrong," and it's broke down and tried. He did not do anything wrong. That was right. But then the problem with Nokia was not aligned to the changing, technological environment. So that, he refused to identify, and they stopped at stage 4. So this is what happened. This is something that all organizations should be doing constantly. Any questions on this? So this has to be mapped to the organization of your choice. Okay. this has to be mapped to the organization of your choice. Any questions on this? Can you see my presentation now? The assignment details?
Yes.
Okay. So here you're talking about the operation strategy of the Hayes and Wheelwright's 4-stage model. Then the next one is how the 4 perspectives influence the organization operation strategy. You know, there are 4 perspectives. One is a top-down perspective. Top-down perspective means your CEO, your head, your board of directors, looks at your operations, and tries to find out what the organization, what the business wants operations to do. So it's a top-down approach. They set your business strategy and they look down and then tell the operations, look, to drive the business strategy, you need to do this. That's the top-down perspective of an operation strategy. Now, does the organization does it do it that way? See, the organization that you selected could be doing that way. You have your board of directors and your CEO. They sit and then draw up their business strategy, and then they look down and then tell the operations, look, we want to achieve this, right? Now, you design your operation strategy to do this. So it's a top-down perspective. Now, bottom-up perspective means from an operations angle, you look at the ground level, ground scenario, and then say, see, we can't actually sustain this. Now, classic example is the automation part. All our distribution, say for example, if you are into retail, you may realize that a lot of retailers are actually moving into online business. Then, from an operations perspective, you look up to the board and say, we have been, doing this manually for such a long time. Now it's high time to actually use technology to enhance our operations. So that's the bottom up now. You look at what is happening at the ground level and then tell the boss, look, this has to change. Then the next one is operations resource perspective. Resources may have changed, right? Resources may have changed. Say, for example, if you are in the manufacturing business, some of the equipment that you are using are getting outdated and there are no support for these equipment. Now the question is, are you going to continue using these equipment until it sort of breaks down to the point that you will not find spare parts for those, or else are you ready to make a decision relating to replacing this with state-of-the-art equipment? So that's the operations resource perspective. Then of course your market requirements perspective. The classic example of market requirements perspective is what happens to Sri Lankan businesses today after this COVID-19 issue. Now more and more organizations are realize, say for example, like supermarkets and all, that realize that going forward, right, we will have to offer online services. Now if they had online services by now, they wouldn't be in the they wouldn't be facing the problem that they're facing now. There are food items that have shelf lives. Those things have to be sort of restrictions in movements, right? They don't have the infrastructure to do online processing. They don't have the distribution network to sort of, do distribution. So these are some of the things happen when you look at a market requirement operation strategy. Any questions on this? Any questions on this? No questions? Clear? Okay, now, then what happens is, this is actually the final part for part A. The final part for part A is a detailed process flow chart of the existing scenario. Now remember, so all these things have to be done, right, before you do the process flow chart. So keep that in mind. So this is very clearly stated. All these areas have to be covered in your presentation before you do your process flow chart, right? So process flow chart will basically tell the viewer of the presentation, or the presentation, that these are the areas that this guy is considering, this organization is considering to relocate or expand to another country. Okay. So their part A is finished. Then we move to part B. Now in the part B, you need to present the process flow chart of operations that will be expanded into selected country. Now, when you do the process flow chart here at the end of part A, you need to identify the gaps. Obviously, you are going to find the gaps, areas that needs improvement. So these things have to be identified. You are not going to expand the operations along with the gaps. You are going to rectify the gaps, bridge the gaps, and then move the operation. So here, when you do your new process flow chart, that should have rectified the previously identified gaps in the operations process. Okay.
JJ, one second.
Yeah. Yes.
If let's say if there is no gaps, then what will happen?
Sure. If you have no gaps, you have to basically specify that you are happy. You are basically happy with the way that the organization is operating now, and you have decided, the organization decided, or to expand the same processes without any change. Okay. So in that case, you may not require a new process flow chart. You can basically say it's the same process flow chart that will be used.
Okay, thank you, JJ.
Okay, right. So then what happens is, then you have to do the analysis of the selected country, using PESTLE, SWOT, right? Whatever model that you think is good, you can use, but PESTLE is actually the acceptable model, right? Then of course you'll be doing the stakeholder analysis for the project. Who are the stakeholders of the project? How do you identify the stakeholders of the project? The risk analysis of the project, the project plan along with the budget. You need to assume the cost involved, right? And then a Gantt chart showing the timeline. Okay. And of course you need the references. Now we are not very sure whether we will be allowed to have physical presentation sessions, given the condition of the country. Okay. So right now, if that is the case, you may not need to chart. So don't print it. We'll make a decision on that closer to the presentation date. Okay. So if you have it in, if you have the process flow charts in soft copy format, that's enough for the moment, right? Okay, clear? Questions before I go to the second part of the assessment? Apparently no questions, right? Okay. So that is the presentation part. Okay. Now you need to write a report. You need to write a reflection and evaluation report, right? Now, reflection and evaluation report, a lot of students struggle in this. Huh? So, you know, you need to understand the requirement of a reflection evaluation report. Now, remember, many students start writing the project per se. The project, this is not a project report. So this is not a place where you go and then describe what you did in your presentation. This is not a place for you to describe and discuss what you have basically done, what you have already done in your presentation. This is a reflection evaluation report. This is about you, about the person, about the student, about the person who is managing this particular project. So this is what the report should identify. Strengths and weaknesses of yourself. Okay. So when you did the project, what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses? You need to critically evaluate yourself. But you can link this one to what you have done. But this is not a place where you discuss what you did. It is more on the impact that what you did had on you. So you need to discuss the strengths and weaknesses. What are the learning experiences that you got through the project? And how this experience would influence future projects like this. Say if you are put in charge of a project where you want to relocate, you are asked to sort of, relocate a certain operation or probably expand a certain operation. How would the experience gained here would influence future such projects, right? So let me take you through the format. Okay, format. This is actually the cover sheet and the assessment format and all. It's there for everything, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Now look at the reflection evaluation, which is important. Right? The importance of reflection, it's supposed to evaluate your performance. It's supposed to identify gaps in your learning. It seeks feedback. It facilitates becoming an independent learner, facilitates an objective view of your own experiences, and help develop better strategies for the future. So what it basically tries to say is, it's about a critical reflection and evaluation of yourself. You have to look at yourself to find out actually where did it go wrong, where did it go right, why did it go wrong, why did it go right. I mean, what are the things that I can learn from it? What are the things, what are the things, that can I do better next time I embark on such a project? Questions on this? Any questions on this?
This has to go on a presentation type or on a Word document type?
Sorry, come again.
This reflection has to go on Word, Microsoft Word doc.
Yeah, Word.
I didn't see. I don't know whether I missed it. I didn't see the number of words required.
A number of words is 1,000.
Okay.
Right? I'll give you that. It
And
is actually
also,
750 to 1000 words. It's there in your assessment brief. Just check that.
And the marks breakdown is 50%, 50% for
That's right, 50-50. Unfortunately, previously it was 30-70. 70% for the presentation and 30% for the reflection. But unfortunately for you, the what do you call university has changed it, right?
and you need references for this as well.
Sorry.
References. What about references
Yeah,
for this?
you need a little bit of references as well. These academic reports. You can basically, if you go to the ECU library and then search for evaluation and reflection reports, or self evaluation, self reflection report, it will actually give you a lot of books on that, so you can basically look at some of these for references. Right. So that's. Any other question on this? Right. So structure of reflective writing is this: what happened, implications of what happened, and the key lessons learned. So those are the three things that should be reflected in your report. What happened, implications of what happened, and the key lessons learned. I'll expand that a little bit more. What happened is, what were the main challenges? How did you react? How did you feel? Was anyone else involved? What surprised you? What are the things that, what unprecedented things that you basically faced? Right? So keep this in the back of your mind when you basically write this. What were the main challenges you faced? How did you react? How did you feel? Was anyone else involved? Right? I'll give you a little bit, I'll give you the structure later, but just bear with me for a moment on this. Then implications of what happened. What is the evaluation of a performance? You think you did well? You think you could have done better? So you should not basically say, yes, I think I did well. You need to give reasons why you are basically saying you did well. So you have to say, these are my objectives and I was able to achieve these. I was very happy with the way that, I was able to finalize, this presentation, that kind of thing. How did you measure this? That's what I'm basically saying now. You think you are, yes, I did very well. I managed to identify the gaps in the process. I managed to I even managed to explain to my superior that there are certain anomalies in the way that you are running your organization, and these have to be rectified. See? So I'm very happy because of that. So have you received any feedback? Have you done any reading of the topics? So you can say, this actually forced me to do a little bit of in-depth reading in this particular areas. Right? You can also say that I ran this project past, my superior or one of my friends, and I've got good feedback. Jayamal is asking, if the project is planned one, how we do an evaluation. You're not doing an evaluation of the project. Now, this is something that a lot of people misunderstand. This is not an evaluation of a project. This is an evaluation of yourself about what.
Is it about like a general evaluation on ourselves on project management, or
Entire project? It's not only about the project management, it's about an entire project. It is about what went right, What went wrong? The entire project. When you say project, it's not only on the project management part. Don't get me wrong here. When you say project, it's the entire, entire presentation that you do. The contents of the presentation.
Is it possible for you to explain with an example, maybe?
Right, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to that. Give me a few minutes, right? Okay. Then second one is key lessons learned. What specific steps will you take, right? Is anything likely to hold you back? Can anyone help you? Do you have a short and long-term plan? So the lessons learned. Now, let me take you through to the assessment brief, right? Let me take you through the assessment brief, and then I will be able to explain to you this in much more detail. Now, give me a sec. Right, can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what is required of the individual report. See, the evaluation would be different from person to person. But what it should cover, right, is this. Describe the experience and the process of, this is not a individual project. Let me, take the, right. Let me take the assessment.
Hello.
Hola.
Right. Yeah. Got cut off. Now I'm going to share this screen with you. Can you see this screen?
No.
Do you see this screen?
No, AJ. Can't see.
Right. Okay. Just a moment.
Yeah, okay now.
Can you see the screen
Now
now?
can see.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you take this is on the Moodle, you can actually take a look at that, right? Assessment brief. Now, if you go right down, you have this marking criteria for individual presentation, and then you have got the marking criteria for individual report. Now, look at the there are 4 things that would be looked at. The first is describe the experience and the process of the individual project and identify your strengths and weaknesses. Now, let's say, you need to describe what you felt when you started the project. you need to, this is something very personal, right? You need to describe what you felt when you did the project. You can basically say, I got the support of these guys, I did not get the support of these guys. You can even say, I was not clear of what I was expected to do, but subsequently, having having had a discussion with my colleagues, I was clear. And then you can basically look at your strengths and weaknesses. What are the strengths and what are the weaknesses? Your strengths could be, right, your capability of, or your ability to sort of go and ask questions from your higher ups or hierarchy in your own organizations. That is your strength. Your strength also could be your knowledge of the operation, because you were involved in setting up some of these activities in that organization. That's your strength. Or else you can basically say, I was the probably head of marketing in this particular organization, and then because of that, I know exactly how that organization's operations are set, and therefore that was an advantage, and that was actually a strength that I had, the strength in terms of knowledge. You can also say my weaknesses. What are your weaknesses? Your weaknesses was because my background is finance. My weakness was the inability to really comprehend how manufacturing processes work. That's your weakness. That's not a strength. Are you with me on this one? Are there any questions on this?
We are with you.
It's
Right?
clear. It's clear.
Right.
Clear.
Okay. Then criterion 2 is learning experience. Identify at least 2 significant learning aspects through this project. What did you learn? So you can say a lot of things. I learned this, I learned that, I learned interpersonal relationships, right? I learned the concepts in operations management. I learned the pitfalls that should be avoided when we embark on expanding business operations to another country. So there are so many things that can basically go along. And then explain, because you are talking about 752,000 words, nothing more. Okay. Then the third criterion is identify how the experience would influence future project management. When you say project management here, it's what it means is similar projects that you would basically be doing in the future. How will this experience, support you or help you? Any questions on this? Please ask. Any questions? Anything that is not clear? So now you know the requirements of the assessment. Okay. So remember, go to the slide which spells out exactly what is required in your presentation, the steps. Then you can't actually go wrong. In the next 2 classes, you will be taken through the project management part. So just incorporate that one into your presentation.
JJ, as my colleague requested, would you have a sample reflection like QS?
Okay, what I'll do is I will post a sample reflective paper, 1 or 2, on the Moodle.
Super. Thanks.
Okay, I will, yeah, I will upload about the 3 sample reflection papers, so you'll know exactly, how to sort of, tackle this, because this is I appreciate that this is something a lot of students struggle, right? A lot of students struggle. So you need to be very
That
careful.
we have to and mention in the reflective essay.
What is that? Come again?
Any literature that we need to mention in
No,
the
no.
nothing.
The thing is, no specific literature. This is no specific literature is actually required. But if you think there are certain literature that can actually help, you can actually put it in. But referencing has to be done even in this one. Referencing could be in relation to the concepts and variables that you used when you do your presentation, right? So those concepts and variables that you use in your presentation can be used as references here, because of the fact that you may be in certain cases alluding to these concepts and variables that you use in a presentation. Say now, for example, you're talking about describe the experience and the process of the individual project, identify your strengths and weaknesses. Now you are basically saying, in the process design, we realized that there are actually about 4 processes. But when I went and then did the study in this operation, we found none of these processes are in place. They had their own processes. Okay. So that is something that you can actually put it in. And then the reference is basically the concept and the theory on process design. Are you with me, or are you clear, or you're not clear?
Yeah. Okay.
I'll explain to you again. Very simple.
Okay.
Let's say you are doing this analysis on the operations performance objectives. Okay. Now you try to find out what are the operations performance objectives that this selected organization is using. Now you find out of the 5 performance objectives like flexibility, dependability, quality, cost, speed, none of these 5 are used, right? But there is something completely different that has been used as operations performance objectives, right? So now that is something that you have identified. And in your learning experience and personalization, you identify that. These are the significant learning aspects. The theories say this, but in practice, organizations use something completely different. That's a learning experience. Now, what you need to do is, you need to put in a reference that will support the 5 performance objectives. Got it? Because that is theory. That is literature. Are you clear or not clear?
Yeah. Thanks.
Right. Anyone not clear, just tell me. So you don't need that that amount of references for this particular assignment. Okay, you need it, but you don't need the type of references that you would be using for the presentation. But you can also do references, referencing papers. So keep that in mind as well, right? Go to the BCU library and in the search box type in reflective papers, or the best practices in writing reflective paper. It will give you a lot of e-documents and e-books, right? You can take a look at some of these kind of things and then use them as references as well. Okay. Any other question? Any areas that you are not clear? Any areas that you are not clear, you want to sort of, clarify things and all, just drop me an email, jj@next.lk, you know that. And I'll try and respond as fast as possible. And please do not miss the next 2 classes. It's going to be very important, the project management part. Okay, so if there are no questions, then we'll wind up. And thanks a lot for your participation, and hope you do well in your assignments.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Shailesh.
expect more calls from us, JJ.
Sure, no problem. You can call me anytime you want, because you're all at home. You're all at home these days. There's nothing to do and all. Right.
Thanks,
Okay.
JJ.
Yes.
JJ, thanks you.
Thanks, AJ. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.